Hey, good morning. It's the Fort Worth Playboy, and this is the Fort Worth Playboy Morning Show. And I'm glad you're here. And we're going to get started this morning. We always start at 6:30 a.m. on Wednesdays. It's about 6:27, and we're going to get a head start, cover some things. And what is the purpose of the Fort Worth Playboy Morning Show? We like to cover game, pickup, relationships, and sex. And again, who is we? We is me, and normally my partner and sidekick, co-host, my Playboy's buddy, and she'll be here tomorrow morning at 7. And usually she rounds out by giving, she's able to filter the red pill and game through her girl brain and give us a honest assessment of how things work, why things work, and how to make things work better, and how women will see things. And quite often it's extremely fascinating that it'll be a 180 from what we see or what they see. But Bouncer 182 is in here. My Playboy's Bunny is in here. And we appreciate you guys being here this morning. And let's get started. We always start with a Maxim from Chateau Artiste, who really birthed this broadcast or this whole Twitter thing. This is foundational, and it's actually Maxim number 200, which is really funny. There's about 230. After about 137, it gets kind of sketchy. He was like just numbering things. So I think there's one even in the 300s, but these are random. It's randomized after a while. But Maxim number 200 is still foundational, which is interesting. Chicks dig guys willing to risk an early, gruesome death. Expendability is a display of high value. Think of a cop, think of a paratrooper, think of military, think of a guy on a motorcycle, firefighters, anything where guys pass away early. And again, it's interesting because this has come up on different threads in different, out of all the guys, I mean, everybody knows one or two guys that like drank a lot, did drugs a lot, ran with a lot of women, and all of them, almost all, I probably knew 8 or 10, all passed away before the age of 30. They all died in early death. And it was never anything like, it was always they fell out of the back of a truck drunk. They crashed their car into a pole. There was a lot of falling out of moving vehicles. But again, it's those alpha characteristics of willing to lay it on the line that's attractive to women, as opposed to a guy who's in a pair of Dockers and a Costco shirt, and he's playing it safe, and he's working for $40,000 a year, and he's mowing the yard. Again, at a certain point, girls will seek out stability over time, maybe, but generally a lack of self-preservation is exciting to women. And it never hurts to have a little bit of that, even if you kind of like need a straight and narrow. And I think that's one of the reasons, like down the road, like where girls get bored within relationships, they have these wild guys that they basically have to tame in order to have children, because you can't have these guys, up 24 hours a day when you have kids in the house. So you have to know that expendability is extremely sexy, that willing to risk and put it on. That's where I always think like motorcycles or boats, anything that is somewhat inherently open and dangerous is a turn on for women. They just love it. Doesn't mean they're going to like really approve of you riding it or risking your ass on it, but they find it interesting and exciting. And for most guys, they need a little bit of that in their life. But as a display, expendability, the willing to die an early and gruesome death, is a display of high value. Whereas, being somewhat conservative and self-preservation isn't. Does it mean you shouldn't do it? No, of course not. But just the appearance of risk-taking and willing, and you see it happen in nature is the guys that with high testosterone that tended to kind of live on the edge, they actually do. The 8 or 10 that I knew, literally none of them made it past their 20s, and most of them it was like early 20s. By 23 or 24, they would die at least one a year. And like motorcycle accidents, falling out of a moving vehicle. That's a lot of it. Drive a truck into a wall. And if you look back at your own history, you'll kind of like see the 1 or 2 guys that you may have known that were, high risk, low good judgment, tend to pass away pretty early on. But these are the men that are exciting to women and interesting to women on every level. Even the girls that go, yeah, I'm not interested in him. There's something about him, is what they'll say. So Balancer 182 says, how come you're still alive? I think because there's actually like a breakover point. Like, even though I like riding motorcycles, I like bikes, I like the military. There's always a little bit like a 10%. I probably was in that upper above 50% risk level, somewhat. There's some self-preservation there. That's pretty funny because I've thought about the same thing. But these guys are that next level. You would know them. There's only one guy that actually I can't believe he's still alive. And it's funny because this is a guy that you never made eye contact with because he had such a, what would you say, a snap temper, and he was dangerous. And now on Facebook, he posts about his plants and his garden and his flower collection. You're like, okay, because guys, they make it into 40s, 50s, 60s. I guess he's late 50s now, and they mellow out. So it is kind of strange to see this guy that was truly dangerous and what he cultivates his garden and his flowers and his grandkids. So it's an interesting thing. Chicks dig guys. Remember this. If you got to put a little danger into your game, Maxim number 200. Chicks dig guys willing to risk an early gruesome death. Expendability is a display of high value. You got to put it on. It's good for you too. A little bit of risk taking is good for you too. Next slide. This one is one that gets guys gets her panties all in a wad. She has sex with you for fun. She has sex with her boyfriend later that day to keep her boyfriend happy and hopefully marry him. Girls have different goals with different guys. And it's funny, I should have saved this because they were doing the old stop and interview, and I think it was in Vegas. And they had 3 or 4 girls stopped, and he was asking them, about different sex acts. And it turned over to the certain point where basically every girl was saying, it depends on the guy. It depends on the guy. It depends on the guy. And that's what you start learning is it really does come down to how she sees you. That there's nothing like seeing Bunny talking shit on the timeline. So she has sex with you for fun, and she really does love her boyfriend, and she does want him to marry her, and she will have sex with him and enthusiastically in order to, as Bunny likes to use a phrase that I thought was genius, lock him in. But just remember, girls have different goals with different men. And they will use sex, especially they'll use recreational sex for fun with you or with your best friend or both of you. And she will have somebody more serious in her life that is more boyfriend, husband, long-term relationship material. And then sometimes, and depending on who I'm talking to, sometimes you're the boyfriend. And, whether she's running around behind your back, most of the guys in our world are pretty savvy. They'll tend to catch that stuff. But again, most of the time, most of the guys in this world are the fun guys because we even push to be the fun guy and not to ask about boyfriends. And the girls are more than happy to go along with that plan. But again, girls have different goals, different outcomes, different motivations for having sex with different guys. And what they'll do with each guy varies depending on how she feels about that guy and that situation and that day. As we always say, hey, girls, how they feel at that moment. But guys do kind of get like all kind of messed up with this. And what I try to convey to guys is anything that you see like on the timeline, always try to spin it as positive as you can. Because generally you guys are the sex for fun guys, the fun guy. We even encourage guys to recognize that. And if you tend to stay away from monogamy and you tend to store, most of the time, you're going to end up being in that realm. And then when you do have a girl that's more dedicated, they tend to know that you're somewhat more savvy than the average guy. There'll be a little less temptation. And you're also aware of what women are truly capable of. Most guys aren't. Most guys never think that she could ever see anybody else. She doesn't talk to anybody else. They never think about checking her phone. None of that. They always find out when she's like already got one foot out the door or she's already gone. But girls will have sex with you for fun. And she has sex with her boyfriend intentionally later that day to keep her boyfriend happy and to hopefully marry him. Girls know who they want to close the deal with. And what they do with you is completely separate from what they're doing with the other guy who they love his mom and they want to have his babies, but she's having fun with you too. She knows this is all short-lived. As long as you know that and you don't get your panties in a wad, things tend to work out in the long run. Especially if you're running a rotation, you have to accept that girls are going to come and go, and they'll tend to move on to find a guy or close a deal with a guy that's more traditional or monogamy oriented. And that's the real deal with she has sex with you for fun. I wanted to cover a Hall of Fame text exchange because it's always good for one to revisit things and reinforce them. And it's another thing to always see the basics at work. And the key principle here is less is more. What solid panty dropping text game looks like, Hall of Fame level game here. Balwani, who's the gentleman at the bottom, with one word, she says, she's sending this. This was texts that were revealed in court between Elizabeth Holmes and her boyfriend and the secret kind of brains behind one of their operations, Balwani. And there's probably, I think there's like a 20 or 25 year age difference between these two, and that she was his girlfriend, and he made her the face of this company that they both ran into the ground. So you are the breeze in the desert for me, my water and ocean, meant only to be together, Tiger. And Balwani says, okay. And that is the perfect text exchange. It is an alpha text exchange. It's everything. It's aloof. He is aloof and indifferent. He has irrational self-confidence, and that's given in every facet of his life. He's selfish and self-centered. Girls love this. They like moths to a flame. Outcome independence. He goes, okay. And he's already on to the next thing. He doesn't even care what her response is. Saying less than her. Again, 17-to-1 word ratio. The golden rule is two words for every three of hers. And Bunny says even that's too many sometimes. It's that 1 to 3 is maybe a better ratio. But this man landed a 17-to-1 word ratio, which is as good as it's ever going to get. And yes, it's the 10-10. He was banging this. She's 18 years younger, Holmes, while she was taking a felony rap. And of course, she, ended up marrying another guy and having his kids, to present a less felonious image. But you have to see text like this, and everybody goes, "Oh, game only works with like dumb, lowest self-esteem, low-quality girls." And this girl's like from Stanford and the head of a multi-million-dollar, albeit fraudulent business, but most of them are. So you are the breeze in the desert for me, my water, the ocean, meant only for us to be together. And he says, okay. And that is how most of your texting once you've been fucking these girls for a while should pretty much look like. They reach out to you in the middle of the day. They haven't heard from you for 2 days, and they give you a block of text, and you're like 10-4 or okay. And that's all they need. They're like, oh, what did he mean by that? That's what you want, is pretty much where they're taking it apart. There used to be like websites where girls would be like discerning men's texts, and it'd be like the guy, you could tell that he was probably like on a job trying to build a house or, work on a car, and he's just blowing her off. And she's like, what does he mean by that? And their brains start rolling. So that's a real deal when it comes to texting. Alpha texting, less is more. Fewer words, no punctuation. Let her text more than you. Let her initiate. And again, even if she came back and says something, just let it hang. Let her be the last one that texts. So that's one of those weird little things that I noticed that was a tip really early on, was like, let her be the one that says the last piece. And you don't have to respond. Just let it hang. But again, there are alpha text tips. No punctuation, no capitalization, fewer words, leave misspelled words. Let her talk more. Less is more. You will see a return on your investment. No emojis. You will see higher investment from the girls, and vary your response time. All of these things show that you're busy and have other interests, and allows them the enjoyment of chasing your ass around, because that's when girls are happiest, when they're chasing a high value man around. And Holmes considered Balwani to be a very high value man. And pretty much, no one even knew they were together, but she was sleeping with him. That was her boyfriend, but he didn't want anybody to know that they were dating. And they lived together. And even like the board of their board didn't even know they were together. So it's interesting and instructive. And that is a perfect text exchange. If you've got one that beats it, I would love to see it. But this one's one that was lined up in court, and you can't beat that for veracity. So let's go to the next slide. And of course, I still haven't mastered how to add sound, but it doesn't really matter, because what's important is, like with indicators of interest, is being able to see them. Indicators of interest are conscious and unconscious habits or gestures or how women behave around a man whom they are interested or attracted or excited by. And watching her watch this man speak, it's not how you normally do it. And they're also in front of a lot of cameras. And Margot Robbie, who's a actress, and I think he was a director or producer, is listening to him speak. And what he's talking about is just this movie they did together. But watching her watch him, and you see this in a number of interactions, between men and women that we've used as examples. She's watching his mouth. She's locked in. She's not paying attention to anything else. And it's an indicator of interest. And if you can't spot indicators of interest, if you can't spot where a girl's fidgeting, where she's rubbing her arm, where she's touching her mouth, and I'm sure if they kept running this, there's more of that. She's giggling, she's watching everything off of him. She moves, he stops. All kinds of indicators of interest. And if you don't know how to spot these, you're running around going, I don't know if she likes me. I can't tell. And girls are like giving you indicators of interest, and you can't even pick up on them because you don't know what to look for, and you have to practice. And I have an entire book on that called Indicators of Interest at fortworthplayboy.gumroad.com. And I'll probably put a link underneath this video. But watching her watch him gives you an idea that if you're aware of it, you'll be able to pick it up. And what he would do is, where he sees, and she's always locked in on him, you're going to be aware of that. And there'll be they come in clusters. There'll be other indicators of interest. But this is a good example. And even though she's a world famous actress, and I think she was in the Barbie movie. And, you know, she's well known. She's still a girl. You know, when I say, has anybody ever banged a celebrity? And the guys that have jumped in, they were just in the proximity. They met her at a party. They met the girl that was a celebrity or very well known. And it was mostly just a normal pickup, but they were in proximity. So women of all ilks, of all statures, they do this naturally. It is a natural reaction to being attracted to a man or a high value man that's within their midst. And it's not always their boyfriend. It's not always, you know, the guy, because there's even one where like Jeff Bezos, his girlfriend's talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, and she can't not lock in on him and giggle and laugh and, you know, fawn over him, because it's a natural evolved response that she can't really stop when a woman is around a high value man that she finds attractive. So know your indicators of interest. You only have to be able to like pick them up, but you do need to know what they are. And every guy that's ever bought this book will actually write me and go, man, she sat down right next to me. I'd never seen her before. She asked to borrow a pen. She's giggling. She listened to all. I've never thought I was more funny. And you will be, and they go, and then I just got up and left, or I didn't get her number. And you find out later that, you know, oh, this was indicators of interest. Well, she balanced her. How would you feel being her husband and seeing her look at the guy like that? Oh, isn't she married? I don't know. And I don't know enough background on her, but that's not unusual. I mean, women, even if they're with their husband, I mean, a lot of this is automatic. It doesn't mean she wants to sleep with this man or cheat on her husband. It means that it's kind of like if you're in a hot room and you start sweating, it is a natural reaction that is unconscious unless you're super aware of it. Most people are not that aware of themselves. A reaction to being around a man who is of high value or of interest, or interesting, I should say. They can't, I mean, there's so many things of like news reporters that are like hardcore liberals. And then when Trump walks in the room, the girls are like giggling and laughing and running up to him and hugging him in front of their husbands, who are other, you know, Democrats. And the foots get going up and the girls were like laughing and giggling while Trump just is himself. You see it all the time. It's unconscious, and you can't stop it. Bunny may know more about, you know, maybe she goes, hey, you know, I'm losing my mind here. But again, it's unconscious, and you can use it to your advantage. You need to know what these things are and be able to catch them as they're happening in real time, and you will quickly realize that there's more girls interested in you than you realize. Most guys just are clueless to indicators of interest, and they're very foundational. So that's Margot Robbie showing her indicators of interest for this gentleman that's right next to her. Next slide. Once you learn gaming, get your shit together. And this is especially for the guys that are late 20s, early 30s. Never feel bad for circling back to your hometown or an old job or an old stomping ground and fucking the girls you couldn't get or missed on the first pass. Class reunions are a good place to wake up with the head cheerleader, homecoming queen, and your secret crush in one weekend. Again, I've heard this story so many times. That's why I wrote the tweet. It was probably like the third or fourth time I had a guy reach out, and he said, you know, I learned this after my divorce, and then I went back to either like a place that he used to hang out or a class reunion, somewhere where he had girls that were somewhat familiar with him, but he was new and improved, and he was, you know, having a threesome with two girls that he had missed the first time that he was, you know, kind of like dorky or didn't have any skill. But never feel bad, because game benefits you and the girls. Girls find you more attractive. They get to sleep with a high value man. There's literally no downside. It's one of those weird things that I never realized why people are so hostile to game or to players, because everybody benefits by having more attractive men that know how to attract women and have fun with them on earth. I mean, there's just everyone benefits. The girls benefit too. They're with guys that they're attracted to. That's like why we teach you dread. It can reignite the attraction that a girl has for her husband that she's grown bored with. You can reignite that attraction, and then she's happy again, and she's happy with the right guy again. Everybody talking shit in the comments, and I think that's pretty funny. So once you learn game and get your shit together, never feel bad about spreading the wealth, using your skills, applying them even to girls that you may have missed the first pass. It's just one of those things. And I think it was probably like the fourth time that some guy had gone to a class reunion, and they don't even intentionally, they just realize that they have a lot more skills and they're a lot more attractive than they were when they were in high school or in college. I think it's an interesting thing. And again, if you guys like what you see, we really appreciate your business, and you can support this channel through either subscribe, comment, save, share, or you can invest financially in your game through FortWorthPlayboy.gumroad.com or MyPlayboysBunny.gumroad.com or MyPlayboysBunny.com. She has all of her products on her own website. And again, the Fuck Like a Porn Star series is unbeatable. There's no reason to go all the way through moving them from stranger to in your bed just to disappoint them and not, actually score a touchdown. You want to give them a good memory, one that they will come back to repeatedly. You want that repeat business, and there's only by, serving the customers, the women, the best of your ability, you're going to get that referrals and repeat customers. So if you guys like this, like it, share it, let us know. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., bright and early, it's Bunny and I on the morning hustle, and we will be here to answer your questions. We usually go about 45 minutes to an hour, and we look forward to seeing you, and thank you for your time this morning. Have a great day.